Warning: this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners. Due to the graphic nature, listener discretion is advised. Welcome from wherever you are. This is the Demon Inside podcast. I am your host, John Benham. If you would like to review another episode of the Demon Inside, you can go to Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and any podcast platform. And please, don't forget to subscribe and rate us with 5 stars. A new episode will come out once a week. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Well, Don Spirit shot and killed his 9-year-old son in 2001. It was ruled an accident. Still, some speculate he may not have fully recovered mentally from that tragedy. Our Carson Chambers continues our team coverage with more on that possibility and the time Spirit spent in Tampa. Carson.
Well, we've been knocking on doors all day long in his former South Tampa neighborhood. We've also dug up his criminal past from the Tampa Police Department and talked to his former public defender. Deputies say Don Spirit accidentally shot another family member in a hunting accident back in 2001. Showing rust on the muzzle of his high-powered rifle, the gun went off, striking his 9-year-old son Kyle in the head. His attorney back then says he took him as a devoted family man.
At the time, from what I knew and what I saw him, I couldn't say anything else. It seemed that way.
Tonight, we know Spirit is suspected of murdering his daughter Sarah and his 6 grandchildren from 3 months to 11 years old. And we're uncovering a history of violence that stretches back to the 1990s when Spirit lived in the south of Gandy home. He was arrested numerous times for misdemeanor battery, a hit-and-run accident with injuries, and felony marijuana possession. Then in 2008, records show Spirit was arrested for battering his then pregnant daughter. A heartbreaking letter sent by his daughter to the court begs for his forgiveness. Sarah Spirit writes, "My father is in jail, and I am the cause of that. Me and my father fight all the time like a normal family does. I have been very stressed out lately, and so has my father, and things got out of hand." She goes on to say, "My dad hasn't been emotionally and mentally stable since his son's death, and he would never hurt someone intentionally." And in that same letter, Sarah writes that she forgives her dad and that he is a big part of her and her family's lives. In Tampa, I'm Carson Chambers. Back to you.
Hello, my Demon Insiders, and welcome back to the Demon Inside. I'm your host, John Benham, and today we are going to be talking about the Demon Inside, Donald Charles Spirit. Now, before we get into his story, let me tell you a few things about Don. He killed his family, and this is going to be another one of those shows that I'm trying to focus on a pattern, and I'm going to give you a little sense of what I'm talking about. Now, during this time frame, there was another killing in Florida that was perpetrated by a mom who killed all her kids with a knife. For me, this doesn't fit the pattern that I am following. What I'm following is a man who kills his family with a gun. I don't just throw in things that match. I find them because it's a fact. And I don't try to manipulate or change anything if it doesn't fit. It just isn't meant to be. So we're going to talk about Don. And like I said, Don killed his family. And he did exactly what the other 3 dads did, which I'm talking about Paul Marriage, Neil Jacobson, and Patrick Dale all did. Paul, Neil, and Patrick killed their family, and then they wanted to kill themselves. Now, Paul and Neil didn't, but Patrick, he did. and so did Don. But before we continue with that, let me go ahead and give you some of his history. So, Don was born on the 11th of December in 1962. And at the time of his death, which was the time of the crime, he was 51 years old. Now, Don had grown up in New Jersey, and I couldn't find much about his school or anything, but I did find uh, an ample amount of uh, records that he had from crimes that he had committed. Now, Don was not a good person by all means. He was, as one of his neighbors said, he was an asshole. But this still struck everybody as strange because nobody thought he would ever do this. So, court records that came from New Jersey said he had, and this was in 1987. They said he had two separate charges: one for theft by unlawful taking, and the other was weapons offense. So for me, that means theft by unlawful taking is he could have been shoplifting, or he could have been, maybe picking something up at a friend's house or whatever, and they told him not to take it. I don't know, but I'm just trying to give you an example of. As far as the weapons offense goes, anything that he was carrying that could have been a weapon was charged against him. Now, he did meet his wife, Christine, and they got married in December of 1989. By 1994, they had moved to Tampa Bay, Florida. By this time, they had 3 kids. They had a girl who was the oldest, and then 2 boys. Now, in 1994, Don was arrested in Tampa Bay for driving without a license and his involvement in an accident that resulted in a death. So, according to public records, he was charged with this crime, but I think he only got probation from what I could find from this. In 1995, a year later, he was found guilty of depriving a child of food and shelter. Now, this one, I'm assuming, could have been his daughter, his oldest daughter, because she wasn't a saint either. She would have been a teenager at this time. She could have ran away from home and he left her outside. She could have came back and he was like, no, I'm not going to let you in. I don't know, but it wasn't serious enough to where they took her away. So as far as the charge goes, I mean, it basically was dropped. So after that, after 1995, they moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. And according to the county clerk there, Don had 6 non-criminal cases involving traffic violations. So what this meant was he was driving, possessing an open container, and driving with a suspended license. So he was also convicted for habitually driving with a revoked license. That's a felony offense. So we're talking about a felon now. Now, here comes a sad part in his life. So on November 14th of 2001, Paul and his 2 sons, his youngest was 9 and his oldest, I think, was 12 at the time, along those lines. And Paul was taking his oldest son hunting. Now, the 9-year-old was crying that he wanted to go. He said, why does my older brother get to have all the fun? So Paul agreed and he took him. And they went for a week and they were at the 3 Lakes Wildlife Management Area. And Don was tired after a week of being out there. They hadn't caught or shot anything. And that morning that they were getting ready to go home, the boys wanted to go out one more time to see if they could get lucky. So Don kind of hesitated for a while, but he gave in to the boys and they went. They didn't get anything, but when they came back, Don placed his rifle on top of the tailgate of his truck, and circumstances happening, which is still kind of shocking to me. He says that he had put the Browning rifle in its case, and then that he had seen, while he was putting it in his case, he had seen some rust or something on his gun, which he took out oil. And when he was rubbing the gun accidentally went off and killed his 9-year-old son. Now, I don't think that Don killed his own son, because after this, his wife says that he was a mess. Of course, they went to get his son help. But it was too late. So now comes charges against Don, and they want to charge him because they're not sure yet if it was an accident or not. And so they're trying to build a case around it. And in September of 2002, he was called, the police were called to his house because he was fighting with his wife. Now, he had got so pissed off that he bashed in the windows on her Chevy Trailblazer with a sledgehammer, and he threatened to kill her. So deputies found no signs of injury on the wife, who later decided not to follow through with charges. As for involving law enforcement, deputies at the time quoted the woman as saying, "If I do it, all it will do is make him more angry." So now comes the trial in 2003. And what happens is basically they release him from any wrongdoing. They say it was an accident, so he wasn't charged with that. But since he was a felon, they gave him 3 years in jail because he shouldn't have been carrying a weapon. Now, I have questions about that too, because how did he get a hunting license if he had a felony charge? Maybe some of y'all know how that works. I don't. I'm not a hunter, so. But his wife wrote in a 2003 letter to the judge pleading for leniency for her husband. She says, and I quote, "The loss of our son has really taken a toll on him, and he blames himself every day. He has punished himself more than the court system ever could punish him. Since our son's death, my husband has been severely depressed. The doctors have not found a medication yet to help him. There is not a day that goes by that I don't catch him crying." Now, she was afraid that if he would have been put in prison for the 3 years that he would kill himself. He ended up getting charged with a felony possession, and he got sent to jail from 2003 to 2006. Now, while he was in there, his wife, after 22 years of marriage, she decided that it was time for her to get a divorce. Now, Don was living by himself, but every now and again, his daughter would come and stay with them. Now, Don and his daughter were close, but they were also volatile towards each other. In other words, when you're living with somebody, eventually you get into arguments or you get into fights. So in 2008, Don pushed Sarah, who was pregnant. Now, this was her first kid, and I think at the time she was 17. And I think this could have been caused because the report says that she was supposed to help him pay with the property taxes. But for me, that didn't sound right. And that source that I got that from was actually a news source, and I couldn't find anything legally saying that. But I'm assuming that maybe she had told him that she was pregnant and he got upset. And, Don being Don, he pushed her into the refrigerator, not violently, but hard enough to scare her. And then he grabbed her face with his hands, and then he let her go. Well, she took off running because she got scared, and she went down the road and called the police. She called 911. So when the police showed up, Sarah, his daughter, told them what happened, and they went to the trailer where Don was at, and Don didn't want to come out, and he was threatening to kill himself. So after a small standoff, Don finally came out, and they arrested him. Now, later, Sarah actually wrote to a judge saying that let me go ahead and read that to you. She says this, and I quote, this was written to the judge. "He will die if he goes to prison, and it will kill me inside to know I put him there," end quote. So that has a lasting effect on the judge, and she actually dropped the charges. She didn't want him to go to prison for that. And in 2013, supposedly Don had physically abused his grandchild. Now, this abuse was because the grandchild was jumping on the sofa, and I'm assuming Don had told her to stop jumping or get down, and then he ended up hitting her with a belt. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses for this guy. I know we live in a different time now, but when I was a kid, getting hit by a belt wasn't the end of the world. We didn't even know it was child abuse at the time, which is kind of sad, but it's the truth. By 2014, the Department of Children and Families had seen, like 2 weeks prior to this killing, that they were thinking that maybe the children weren't in a good place. For some odd reason, it got past them. And I'm not going to get into that because that's all you hear about in the news or read about in the news, because they're trying to turn this case back then from him killing his family to making it the fault of the Child Protective Services. If you want to look that up, great. If you don't worry about it. My thing is, we're focusing on Don. Now, the Child Protective Services people, or the children and families, they said that Don was there as a stable person for Sarah and the kids. So September 18th is when these murders occurred. But the police found that they think is the reason why this happened, which was on the 17th. So I'm going to read you what happened on the 17th of what the police think happened. And people that knew him, that knew Don, said that he wasn't really acting like himself. And they would see him from time to time where he would walk out to the end of the driveway so that he could pick up the 4 grandkids that would come to the house. And he did this every day during school. So for me, if this guy really didn't give a crap about anybody, why would he do that? Now, let me explain why I say that. On the day before the murder, there was a report that Colleen Stewart, which is the great aunt of the 3 youngest kids, she was at the trailer where Don and Sarah and the kids were. And she reportedly overheard him tell the daughter, and I quote, "Her kids were not worth a shit. Tell someone to come get them because I don't love them. I hate them," end quote. Now, the report also states that later on, Don had apologized and explained he was stressed out. Now, he was stressed out because Sarah didn't have a job, and he was paying all the bills, and he was paying for all the kids, and she had started doing drugs again. And supposedly, and this was his thought of this lady, the great aunt, she supposedly had introduced Sarah to a guy named Jose 2 days prior, and he had given her $25 on the 16th and $70 on the 17th for sexual acts, supposedly. Now, my thing is this. He said that he was going to kill them all. Now, let me go down the road first. Let me do this first. So, he says that she was doing sexual acts, and he didn't want this to happen. But on the report, they put that he wanted some of the money. So why would he want some of the money for a sexual act that he hated so much? And I'm going to explain why he hated it so much to the point where he kills his family, supposedly. Like I said, none of this is really concrete. He didn't leave a suicide note. I actually saw the takedown, like when the police showed up in his front yard, and everything that the cop says, he said, I didn't hear. But maybe they knew something that I didn't. But anyway, so this was building up in Don. So on September 18th of 2014, Don decides that enough's enough. And he's not going to let Sarah become a prostitute. And he's not going to have the grandkids go down that road with her. And he was going to take care of it that day. And it was going to be a done deal. So around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Don goes out to the end of the driveway, picks up his grandkids, walks them back. I'm assuming him and Sarah get into an argument because in the kitchen, there's like a mess, like there was a struggle. And I think he stabbed Sarah 6 times, they said. Now, this doesn't fit into my pattern, but this is when I'm looking at Austin Haroff, the face eater. He stabbed one of his victims before he started biting the face off of a person. I don't know what that significance is, but I'm not going to hold it out of this either because, like I said, everything has a purpose. And I don't want to try to make things fit that don't fit. Austin Haroff had the naked person, where he was seeing demons, where he was growling like an animal, where he was biting the face off of a person, but he also had a knife that he stabbed somebody with and killed somebody with. Now, with this family annihilator, he had stabbed Sarah 6 times, and then all of a sudden, he was pistol whipping her. Think about this, guys. This is a guy that was aggressive and violent, of course, but he had never really hurt anybody. Yes, he pushed Sarah against the refrigerator, but it wasn't like he beat her up. Yes, he broke the windows to his ex-wife's Bronco or Blazer, but he didn't beat her up or kill her. So, on the day of September 18th, after the kids are home from school, like I said, him and Sarah get into a fight. He stabs her. He hits her with a gun, and he shoots her in the head in the backyard. And he covers her with a tarp. Then he goes into the trailer where he kills all 6 of his grandkids. Now, after he's done, he does something that I've seen done a couple of times. Deborah Jeter was one of these people that she stabbed her daughters and then called 911. Don did the same thing. Don called 911, and I'm going to play that for you now.
Gilchrist County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I just shot my daughter and shot all my grandkids, and I'll be sitting on my step, and then when you get here, I'm going to shoot myself.
What is the address that you're at, sir?
2550 Northwest, 25 Terrace, Don Spirit. Every one of them are dead.
You said your name is Don Spirit?
Yep.
All right, Don, what kind of gun do you have?
It doesn't matter what kind of gun I got. They're all dead, and then when you get here, I'll shoot myself, and then you figure out what kind of gun it is.
How long ago this happened, Don?
I don't want to hear it, man. I'm done with every fucking thing. Just bring the motherfuckers out here, that's all. You got all the kids are dead in the house.
Okay, how many people? Okay, how many people?
6 kids, 1 adult.
6 kids and 1 adult?
Yeah. One of them is a baby.
All right, Don. Is there any way you can stay on the phone with me till I get somebody there to help you?
What's that?
Can I have you stay on the phone with me?
No, not that. I'm waiting for them to get here. When they get here, I'm going to shoot myself on my back step. All I'm doing is waiting for them.
So you're sitting on your back steps?
Yep.
Okay, Don.
So after Don hangs up with 911, the police show up about 9 minutes later, and they see him down at his trailer, and he's sitting on the back of his pickup truck on the tailgate, and he's drinking water out of a jug. For me, this is weird because if you're going to kill yourself, you've already killed your family, you're going to kill yourself. Why are you hydrating? My guess is, remember, Austin Haroff had a thing about water. He says that he had more energy with it. He had more of control over water. Maybe this demon needs water to be able to control or to gather energy to make this guy do what he wanted. Maybe he didn't have that strength with Paul Michael Marish or with Neil Jacobson, but he did have it with Patrick Dell, enough to kill Patrick Dell himself. And now Don, after drinking the water, he goes back to the back of the trailer, comes back out with a gun. He yells profanities at the cops, says he's not mad at them. He's mad at his daughter and the grandkids, and he put an end to it. And now he was going to put an end to himself. And he does. He shoots himself in the head, and he dies there. This has a lot of the similarities to Patrick Dell, to Neil Jacobson, to Paul Michael Marish. So when I was talking about this demon, I said that I believed he had a sense of humor. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I think this is his sick way of playing with humankind. When he killed Paul Michael Marish, his family with Paul Michael, Paul had twin sisters. Then the next ones that he killed were the twin boys of Neil Jacobson. Now, Patrick was more of just a spare of the moment thing, because maybe he saw it coming and he knew that he could be there just for that push, like I told you in the last episode. And with Don, this is where the joke, his sick joke, comes in. Don kills his family 4 years almost to the day. Patrick Dale killed his family in September 27th of 2010. This was almost 4 years exactly to the date. Don killed his family September 18th. Now, like I told you before, I think this demon has a sense of humor and decided to do this within that time frame just to show himself, like, look at me. Now, in 2014, at this time, his dog, was trying to find his master. He was with Anderson Joseph in 2014. Now, remember, we have one more that finishes this pattern for me, and that's going to be next week's episode. So for me, Don stabbing his daughter could have been just the fact that he was upset. And when he started stabbing her, this demon took over with all that rage, blinded rage, and he just grabbed the gun and started shooting. And we've heard that before with other people that have killed their families, where they said, once I started, I just couldn't stop. For me, that's the demon, that when you're angry like that, you allow it in, whether you know it or not. And that's when he does what he does, and it makes you feel like it's you doing it. When in reality, you would never hurt your family. I don't think Don ever wanted to hurt his family. And I don't even know why Don would have a gun after the incident with his first son. I know if I would have accidentally killed my son, God forbid, I would have never carried a gun again. Next week, we're coming to that end. It's going to be my season finale, and I'm going to bring in all the different crimes that this pattern has followed, from the master demon to his dog or pet who's trying to find him. And trust me, it all links back all the way up to Matthew Bernard. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll talk to y'all next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the Demon Inside podcast on any podcast platform. A new episode of the Demon Inside will be released every week. Let us know what you think of the episode on all our social media platforms. If you have any questions or comments, go to the Demon Inside podcast at gmail.com or click on the link down below. We would love to hear from you. And to become a Demon Insider, go to our website, thedemoninsidepodcast.com. We thank you for listening and hope you will join us next week for a new Demon Inside podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends. I am John Venom, and I'll see you next time, if I don't get possessed. The Demon Inside was written and created by James Porter. It is a production of Venomous Entertainment. Background music is by Lucas King.
and the title song Demon Inside was produced by Rice Pulver, composer lyricist Peter Shelley, and performed by Conjure One.